I got kicked out the night before deployment. My parents called it tough love military style. I read the eviction notice, pulled my name tape from my collar, and laughed. They had no idea what they'd signed when they never bothered reading the papers I'd given them. They thought they'd taken everything, my savings, my car, my grandfather's wooden box. But the military taught me one thing: everything leaves a paper trail, and every trail leads back to its rightful owner. Before dawn on shipping day, I didn't ask for anything back. I reclaimed it, and I made them sign the receipts. My name is Avery Dalton, and I've spent the last 3 years living 2 lives. By day, I'm a combat air operations officer with the 11th Expeditionary Support Brigade at Venmont Command, running SOPs and checklists until they become muscle memory. By night, I've been untangling the financial web my parents wrapped around me when I was too young to know better. Ridge Harbor looks perfect from the outside coastal town. White churches, neat lawns that smell like fertilizer and broken promises. My parents, Victor and Elaine Prescott, fit right in. Church board members, PTA volunteers, the kind of people who say, "bless your heart," while calculating interest rates in their heads. The deployment orders came 3 weeks ago. 9 months in the sandbox. I'd been updating my will, securing my accounts, making sure everything was locked down tight. That's when I discovered the first thread. My deployment savings account, the one I'd been building for 2 years, showed a 0 balance. The withdrawal slip had my mother's signature. The car I'd been paying off since I joined the registration had been quietly transferred to joint ownership with her name first. But the worst part wasn't the money or the car. It was grandfather's box. The wooden box sat in my bedroom closet for 11 years, since the day he died. Hand-carved oak with brass corners, it held his service medals, his watch, and a letter he wrote me before the cancer took him. Last Tuesday, I came home from a 12-hour shift to find the closet door ajar and the box gone. My mother stood in the kitchen, wiping down counters that were already clean. Oh, that old thing. We put it in storage for safekeeping. You know how damp your room gets. My room had never been damp. The storage unit was in her name. The key was on her ring. I started my evidence log that night, a simple Excel sheet at first. Then photos, screenshots, bank statements. Every receipt they'd signed with my money. Every transfer they'd made. Every lie coded in transaction numbers and dates. The military trains you to document everything. Cover your ass, they say. Leave no gap in the chain of custody. The house told its own story. The new kitchen renovation my father bragged about at church paid for with my combat pay. The cruise they took last summer funded by the car loan I was still servicing. Even the damn crown molding in their bedroom came from my housing allowance. They'd been careful, though. Everything done through that power of attorney I'd signed at 18. Sitting at their dinner table with my fresh boot camp haircut, trusting them when they said it would make things easier while you're deployed. I kept working my shifts, kept my mouth shut, kept gathering evidence. My supervisor noticed me staying late, assumed it was pre-deployment anxiety. "Take some time with your family, Dalton," she said. "These last days are important." She had no idea. 3 nights ago, I tested them, asked for $2,000 from my savings to cover deployment gear. My mother's face tightened like a drawstring bag. "That account's been closed, sweetie, for your own good. You know how you are with money. I've never missed a payment in my life. My credit score is 790. But in their story, I'm the irresponsible child who needs managing. The evidence log grew 43 unauthorized transfers, 16 forged signatures, 1 stolen inheritance, and a paper trail that led straight through their checking account to their mortgage payments. They'd built their retirement on my back while telling everyone at First Methodist how proud they were of their daughter's service. Tomorrow, I ship out. Tonight, they think they've won. They're wrong. Age 18. Fresh out of basic, still smelling like CLP and boot polish. I sat at their dinner table while Mom served pot roast that tasted like chlorine she'd bleached the cutting board 3 times before touching the meat. Everything in that house reeked of Clorox and conditional love. "Just sign here, sweetheart," my father said, sliding the papers across the table. Standard power of attorney. Makes it easier to handle your affairs while you're at training. Why, the dining room light caught his wedding ring as he pointed to the signature line. Behind him, the wall displayed my basic training photo next to his old real estate awards. Victor Prescott Salesman of the Year, 3 years running. He could sell flood insurance in the desert. I signed. Of course I signed. What 18-year-old questions their parents? We'll take good care of everything, my mother said, already filing the papers in her color-coded accordion folder. Elaine kept records like a Fortune 500 accountant, every receipt, every statement, every penny tracked in her perfect handwriting. You just focus on serving your country. The pattern started small. 100 here for processing fees, 200 there for emergency house repairs. Always with a phone call first, always with that disappointed sigh. We hate to ask, honey, but you know how tight things are. Tight things weren't. Victor pulled $60,000 a year selling insurance. Elaine worked part-time at the church, but they owned their house outright inherited from her mother. The vacation photos on Facebook told different stories than the poverty they performed for me. Sunday dinners became interrogations wrapped in prayer. Lord, we thank you for this food, for our daughter's service, and for the patience to guide her in financial responsibility. Amen. Then, the questions. How much was my housing allowance? When did combat pay kick in? Had I considered increasing my life insurance? You should make us the beneficiaries. Mom suggested over green beans that squeaked against the fork. Just temporarily, until you're married. They taught me shame in small doses. Comments about my spending, though I barely spent. Jokes about military girls and their poor choices. My father's favorite, you know what they say, military intelligence is an oxymoron. He'd laugh, expecting me to laugh too, while I cataloged every insult in the back of my mind. The first time I noticed money missing, they had an explanation. We moved it to a high-yield savings account, better interest. The second time, we paid off your phone bill for the year. One less thing to worry about. Always reasonable, always for my own good. I started keeping my own records then. Screenshots of every balance before and after I visited home. Photos of documents they had me sign for insurance purposes. Recordings on my phone when they discussed my finances, thinking I wasn't paying attention. The house transformed around my donations. New appliances appeared, stainless steel everything. The basement got finished. A hot tub materialized in the backyard. At church, they testified about God's provisions, their blessed abundance, while I ate ramen in the barracks to make my gutted paycheck stretch. We're so proud of our daughter. I heard my mother tell her prayer group. She's learning such discipline in the service. Discipline. That's what they called it when I stopped coming home for holidays, when I stopped answering calls about urgent house repairs, when I changed my direct deposit and suddenly their emergencies stopped being so urgent, but the power of attorney remained. That single document, signed by a teenager who trusted too much, became their skeleton key to everything I'd built. Evidence log entry, $47 email from Elaine Prescott, March 15th. Subject, disappointment. Contents include accusations of selfishness, abandonment of family values, and threats to take what we're owed for raising you. Evidence log entry, number 48. Bank statement showing unauthorized transfer of $3,500 from deployment savings to Victor Prescott's checking. Same day as above email. Evidence log entry, Dahmer 49. Photo of new riding lawnmower in parents' garage. Model number matches charge on my credit card. The evidence log became my second religion. Every entry a verse in the scripture of their theft. The lock clicked at 9:47 p.m. I stood on the porch with my deployment paperwork in hand, watching my key refuse to turn. Through the window, I could see my father in his recliner, remote in hand, deliberately not looking toward the door. My mother opened it 6 inches, chain still on. We think it's best if you find somewhere else to stay tonight. My deployment briefing is at 0600 tomorrow. That's not our problem anymore. She held out a black garbage bag, the plastic stretched thin with hastily shoved clothes. Your things. Behind her, my father finally stood, walking over with the practiced swagger of a man about to close a deal. You want to be independent? Be independent. Stop leeching off your parents. Leeching. I'd paid their mortgage for 18 months. I need my documents, my laptop, my... Everything you need is in the bag. My mother's voice had that church sweet coating, like frosting over burnt cake. We've taken care of the rest. The house you've been paying on. We've formalized the transfer to our names temporarily, of course, to protect the investment while you're deployed. The small house on Maple Street. My escape plan. My future. The place I'd been rebuilding weekend by weekend. They'd been on the deed as co-owners, another 18-year-old mistake, but I'd made every payment, fixed every leak, painted every wall. That's theft. That's family helping family, Victor said, pulling out his phone. Want me to call Pastor Morrison? Explain how you're treating your parents, right before deployment. They knew I wouldn't. They knew the game. My commanding officer attended First Methodist. Half the congregation worked on base. Make a scene now, and I'd deploy with a reputation. The savings account. I kept my voice steady, counting breaths like incoming rounds. 1, 2, 3, closed. The money's been properly allocated to cover your debts to us. What debts? Elaine pulled out a folder. Of course she had a folder and read from an itemized list. 18 years of room and board, calculated at market rates, educational expenses, emotional damages from your abandonment of family values. It actually comes to more than what was in the account, but we're willing to forgive the difference. My phone buzzed. A notification from my bank insufficient funds. They'd drained everything while I was at work, timing it perfectly for after hours so I couldn't call anyone. My grandfather's box. In storage. We'll consider returning it when you learn respect. I stood there, holding the garbage bag of my belongings, watching my breath fog in the porch light. In combat training, they teach you about the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. My instructors would be proud of how fast I cycled through it. Observe. 2 parents who'd just declared war. Orient. 72 hours until deployment. No money, no house, a bag of clothes. Decide. Take it all back. Act, smile. Okay, I said, shifting the bag to my left hand. I understand. My mother's eyes narrowed. She'd expected tears, begging, the prodigal daughter routine. You understand. Completely. You've made your position clear. I pulled out my phone, screenshot the time and date. 9:52 p.m. January 15th. You've refused me entry to the residence, seized my assets, and retained my personal property. Don't get dramatic, Victor said, but his salesman smile wavered. Not dramatic, just precise. I backed away from the door, keeping my eyes on them. Enjoy the house. Dad, Mom, that new kitchen looks beautiful. I'm sure the deployment money will cover the next renovation too. If you think you can... I don't think anything. I know. I hefted the bag over my shoulder. Every transaction, every transfer, every forged signature. The paper trail you taught me to keep. Mom, I learned from the best. The chain came off the door. Victor stepping onto the porch. You threatening us? No, sir. Just observing that everything leaves a record. Your signature on the transfer documents. The IP addresses. The timestamps. Even that power of attorney, did you know they expire? Did you know they can be revoked? Did you check the dates? I walked backward down the driveway, memorizing their faces. The moment they realized I wasn't the 18-year-old who'd signed those papers. The second they understood that 3 years of military intelligence training taught me more than just radio protocols. 72 hours, I called out, reaching my car, still mine for now, until they figured out how to steal it too. Enjoy them. Evidence log. Entry Dadur 73. Video recording of illegal eviction. Parents' admission of asset seizure. Timestamp saved. Evidence log entry Dadur 74. Screenshot of bank transfers. Pattern suggests wire fraud across state lines. Evidence log entry 75. Text from Elaine Prescott. 10:13 M. Don't come back. Perfect. Everything on record. Everything documented. The war was on. Maya Rios answered her door at 10:30 p.m. in tactical pants and a cybersecurity conference t-shirt, laptop still glowing behind her. Jesus, Avery, you look like you're planning an invasion. I need your help. She took one look at the garbage bag over my shoulder and pulled me inside. Coffee or whiskey? Coffee. I have 70 hours. Maya's apartment was command central for paranoid privacy VPN routers, encrypted drives, and enough processing power to hack a small country. She worked private sector now, protecting corporations from people like her. We'd met at a veterans transition workshop. She'd liked that I took notes in code. Tell me everything. I did. Every stolen dollar, every forged document, every power play. Maya took notes on a whiteboard, drawing connections like a conspiracy theorist with security clearance. The power of attorney, when did you revoke it? 6 months ago. Filed the revocation with the county, sent certified mail to their address. They signed for it. But kept using the old one. She grinned. That's fraud. Federal if they used it across state lines. Did they? The investment account is based in Delaware. Beautiful. She pulled up 3 monitors. Send me everything. Every screenshot, every recording, every piece of evidence you've collected. While Maya worked her digital magic, I called Jalen Brooks. He answered like he'd been expecting me. Jalen always knew when storms were coming. Heard shouting from your parents' place earlier, he said. You need service, process service, witness testimony, and someone who knows the emergency court procedures. Lucky for you, I've got a judge who owes me a favor. How fast we moving? 68 hours fast. Meet me at 7 a.m. at the courthouse. Bring everything. My next call was to the Veterans Legal Center. The night answering service connected me to a pro bono attorney named Sarah Winters, former JAG, current crusader against financial exploitation of service members. They used a power of attorney to drain your accounts the night before deployment. Her voice went from sleepy to sharp. That's not just fraud. That's violation of the Service Member Civil Relief Act. How much documentation do you have? 3 years' worth. Financial records, recordings, emails. Can you get it to me tonight? Already uploading to a secure server. By midnight, I had my squad assembled and my operational order drafted objective complete asset recovery before deployment at 0600 hours, January 18th. Task organization, Maya Rios Digital Forensics, financial tracking, evidence compilation, Jalen Brooks Legal Service, court filings, witness documentation, Sarah Winters Legal Strategy, emergency motions, SCRA violations, Avery Dalton coordination, documentation, primary complainant execution, Phase 1 financial emergency freeze on all accounts touched by parents. Maya tracked 17 accounts they'd been busy. The deployment savings, checking. Even a CD I'd forgotten about. She found transfers to their personal accounts, their church renovation fund, even a boat loan in my name I didn't know existed. Phase 2. Property. The house on Maple Street was trickier. They'd filed a quitclaim deed 2 days ago, but Sarah found their mistake they'd used the revoked power of attorney. The notary who stamped it was their church friend, but the timestamp showed it was filed after the certified mail receipt. We can get an emergency injunction, Sarah said. Freeze the property transfer. Demand accounting of all funds used for the property. Phase 3. Personal items. The grandfather's box was leverage. Jalen had a friend in the sheriff's department who could execute a civil standby for property recovery. Best part, Jalen said, reviewing doorbell camera footage from the neighbors. I've got video of them carrying the box from your room to their car yesterday. Theft of property valued over $500 is a felony in this state. Timeline, T-minus 62 hours. File emergency motions, T-minus 48 hours. Serve papers at church fundraiser, T-minus 24 hours. Execute property recovery, T-minus 12 hours. Secure final documentation, T-hour deploy with everything recovered. I wrote it all on Maya's whiteboard. Military precision applied to civil warfare. Each task had a timeline, a responsible party, and 2 contingency plans. You know what I love about this, Maya said, pulling up their social media. They documented everything. Every purchase, every vacation, every renovation, time-stamped, geotagged proof of spending your money. Sarah looked up from her laptop. The church fundraiser Sunday that's public. Black tie optional. They're honoring my father as Volunteer of the Year. Perfect venue for service, Jalen said. Public, documented, lots of witnesses. By 3 a.m., we had 37 pages of documentation, 16 emergency motions drafted, and a timeline precise to the minute. My parents thought they'd won with calculated cruelty and a folder of forms. They forgot I was trained for war. Evidence log entry, Nutter 96. Operational order established. All units briefed. Mission is a go. The First Methodist Fellowship Hall sparkled with string lights and Christian charity, round tables draped in white, centerpieces of silk flowers, and a slideshow of my father's volunteer work playing on loop. Victor Prescott feeding the homeless, teaching Sunday school, building houses with Habitat for Humanity. The perfect father, the generous soul. I stood at the entrance in my dress blues, every ribbon aligned, every brass piece gleaming. Maya flanked my left in a sharp business suit, USB drive in her pocket. Jalen took position by the emergency exit, process server credentials visible, papers in his leather portfolio. Avery, Mrs. Morrison, the pastor's wife, clutched her pearls. We didn't expect you. Your mother said you'd already deployed. Delayed by 24 hours, ma'am. Couldn't miss Dad's big moment. The crowd parted as I walked through. Military uniform always does that. Whispers followed like tracers. There's the Prescott girl. Didn't she have some falling out? Look how thin she is. Problems at home. My parents sat at the head table, my father already wearing his Father of the Year pin, my mother in her best St. John suit. They saw me coming. Mom's champagne glass stopped halfway to her lips. Dad's politician smile calcified. Sweetheart, he said loud enough for nearby tables to hear. What a wonderful surprise. I kissed his cheek for the audience, whispered in his ear, smile, everyone's watching. The microphone squealed as Pastor Morrison called attention. Before we present our Volunteer of the Year award, I understand Victor's daughter has something she'd like to share. I hadn't planned that, but Morrison was ex-Navy. He knew dress blues meant something. I took the mic. Thank you, Pastor. I wanted to personally thank my parents for teaching me such valuable lessons about documentation and financial responsibility. Nervous laughter from the crowd. My mother's hand found my father's arm. They taught me to keep perfect records, every transaction, every signature, every transfer. I pulled out a manila folder. So I've prepared a special recognition for them. Mom, Dad, would you mind signing this certificate of appreciation? I had it specially made. The crowd applauded. How sweet. What a good daughter. My father had no choice but to stand, to walk to the microphone, to take the pen I offered. He opened the folder. His face went from red to white in 3 seconds. Inside wasn't a certificate. It was a receipt. An itemized receipt listing every dollar they'd taken, every forged signature, every fraudulent transfer. At the bottom, a simple statement. We acknowledge receipt of the above items and agree to their immediate return. I can't, he started. Of course you can sign it. Dad, you've signed so many things with my name. Signing your own should be easy. Maya stepped forward, laptop open. Mr. Prescott, while you're reviewing, perhaps the congregation would like to see the financial presentation we've prepared. The slideshow of charity work disappeared, replaced by bank statements, transfers from my account to theirs, timestamps, amounts. The boat loan in my name appeared on screen, the renovation paid with my deployment bonus. The cruise funded by my savings. This is inappropriate, my mother hissed, standing. What's inappropriate? Jalen said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Is theft, Mr. Prescott, Mrs. Prescott, you're being served. He handed them the stack of papers, injunctions, fraud charges, SCRA violations, each one time-stamped, filed, official. The church treasurer, a retired FBI accountant, leaned forward to read the screen. Victor, that's your signature on these transfers. We have a power of attorney, which was revoked 6 months ago. I said into the mic. They received certified notice. Continued use after revocation is fraud. My father grabbed for the laptop. Maya stepped back, and 2 church board members stood up, not to help him to block him. The box, I said quietly. Just for my parents. Grandfather's box. Return it now. Or the next slide shows the police report for felony theft. My mother's composure cracked. You can't do this. We're your parents. You were my parents, until you chose to be my thieves. Pastor Morrison took the microphone. I think we need to pause the celebration. Victor, Elaine, perhaps we should discuss this in my office. But I wasn't done. I pulled out a second folder, handed it to the church board president. The renovation fund they contributed to so generously, you might want to verify those funds weren't stolen. Financial crimes can implicate recipients if they knew or should have known. The entire hall went silent. 300 people watching my parents shrink into themselves. My father signed the receipt. His hand shook, making his signature barely legible. My mother signed next, tears ruining her makeup. The box, I said. It's in the car, she whispered. Jalen will escort you. As they walked out, Jalen behind them, video recording everything, Maya packed up the laptop. The evidence would be submitted to court in the morning, but the public shame that was immediate. That was irreversible. Pastor Morrison caught my arm. Was this necessary? They stole from someone about to die for their country. Pastor, what would you have done? He had no answer. Evidence log entry, Naro 113. Public acknowledgement of theft obtained. Signatures secured. Witness count 300 plus. T-minus 15 minutes. Sarah's phone lit up. Emergency injunction granted. All accounts frozen pending investigation. We sat in my car outside the church. Engine running, watching the parking lot empty. My parents' Lincoln was still there. They were inside with Pastor Morrison, probably spinning tales of ungrateful daughters and military brainwashing. Phase 2 is live, Maya announced, fingers flying across her phone. The freeze just hit their accounts. Watch. She pulled up their bank app. She'd recovered my old login from when they'd added themselves to my accounts. The joint checking they'd been funding with my money. Account restricted. Their savings account restricted. Even the credit cards they'd opened in my name frozen. How long until they notice based on their spending patterns? Maya checked her notes. Your mom tries to buy Starbucks every morning at 6:45 a.m. Your dad has auto pay for his country club dues tonight at midnight. Jalen returned with grandfather's box, handling it like evidence. Got it. They tried to claim it was theirs, but I had the neighbor's doorbell footage on my phone showing them taking it from your room. Your mom actually cried. I opened it in the car. Everything was there, his medals, his watch, the letter, but they'd added something, a sticky note in my mother's handwriting. Since you love documentation so much, Mom, under it, receipts. Every birthday dinner they'd bought me, every Christmas present, dentist bills from when I was 12, an itemized list of what they thought I owed them for being born. That's evidence of malicious intent, Sarah said, photographing everything. Judges love proof of premeditation. Maya's laptop chimed. Incoming. Your dad's trying to access the house equity line of credit. Another chime. Denied. Your mom's attempting an online transfer. Chime. Also denied. The Lincoln's reverse lights came on. They were leaving, but slowly, like they'd aged 10 years in an hour. Jalen, you ready for the house? Sheriff's deputy meets us there in 20. Civil standby is approved. We convoyed to Maple Street, my little house that they'd tried to steal. The locksmith was already there, a veteran-owned company that Sarah had called. Happy to help someone deploying, he said. No charge for service members. My parents pulled up as we were changing the locks. They parked across the street, watching. The deputy stood by my car, hand resting on his belt, not threatening, just present. That's our house, my father shouted from his car window. Sarah walked over with the papers. According to the emergency injunction, it's under legal review. The fraudulent quitclaim deed has been voided. Until the court determines rightful ownership, only the person who's been making payments can access it. That's your daughter. She can't do this. My mother was out of the car now, her church dress wrinkled, makeup streaked. We have rights. You have court dates, Sarah corrected. 3 of them: financial fraud, violation of the Service Members Civil Relief Act, and felony theft. I'd suggest getting a lawyer. The locksmith finished, handed me new keys. 4 copies, 1 for me, 1 for the property management company that would handle it during deployment, 2 for the court. I walked through my house while they watched from the street. Everything they'd moved was documented, my furniture rearranged, my office converted to my mother's craft room, my belongings boxed in the garage. Maya photographed it all. In what was supposed to be my bedroom, they'd installed a Murphy bed and my mother's sewing station. My deployment photos were gone, replaced with their vacation pictures. On the desk, more papers they'd been preparing to rent it out while I was gone. Keeping the profits. $2,300 per month. Maya read from the rental agreement. 9-month lease starting February 1st. They were going to make $20,000 off your deployment. The deputy knocked. Ma'am, your parents are requesting permission to retrieve their belongings. Their belongings are in the garage, I said. The sewing machine, the craft supplies, their vacation photos. They have 10 minutes. I stood on my porch, and watched them carry boxes to their car. Each trip, they looked smaller. My father's volunteer pin caught the streetlight, mockingly bright against his rumpled shirt. The medical bills, my mother said on her last trip. We have bills from raising you. And I have bills from paying your mortgage, I replied. Want to compare? She opened her mouth, closed it, clutched her box of crafting supplies tighter. Sarah checked her phone. The judge wants an expedited hearing. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. I ship out at 0600. Video testimony is approved. You can call in from the deployment center. My father loaded the last box, turned to face me. You've destroyed us. No, I said, holding grandfather's box. You destroyed yourselves. I just documented it. They drove away at 11:58 p.m. At midnight, Maya's phone lit up. Victor's country club dues bounced. His membership would be suspended by morning. One more phase, Jalen said, checking his watch. The finale. Evidence log entry. 127. House secured. Locks changed. Parents' acknowledgement of removing their property witnessed by sheriff's deputy. The Prescott living room looked like a crime scene. Not blood and violence, paper and precision. Jalen's body cam recorded everything. The notary public sat at the coffee table. Seal ready. The locksmith from earlier stood as my witness. Every surface held evidence bags, tagged and numbered. My parents sat on their own couch like guests, hands folded, watching their house become a courtroom. Let's be clear about what happens now, Sarah said, arranging documents. You can cooperate, sign the restitution agreements, and this stays civil. Or we can wait for criminal charges. Wire fraud across state lines is federal. The FBI takes financial exploitation of service members very seriously. My father's jaw worked like he was chewing glass. This is extortion. This is consequence, Sarah corrected. Your daughter has been more than generous. She's giving you a choice. I sat across from them, grandfather's box on my lap. Inside, under his medals, were the papers they'd never known about his will, leaving everything to me, explicitly excluding them for reasons he'd detailed in painful clarity. I could have used it years ago. I'd waited for this moment. The supplemental power of attorney, I said, pulling out a notarized document, filed 6 months ago when I revoked the original. It includes a clawback clause. My mother leaned forward. A what? If the appointed party misuses the authority for personal gain, they're liable for triple damages plus interest. I set the paper between us. By my calculation, you owe me $147,000. We don't have— I know exactly what you have. Maya interrupted. Laptop open. Your retirement accounts, the boat, the equity in this house. It's actually worth about $153,000, so you'll have $6,000 left over." The room went silent except for the body cam's subtle hum. "Or," I continued, "you sign the restitution agreement, return the stolen funds just to the principal. No interest. Transfer the car back. Remove yourselves from all my accounts. And we call it even." My father stood, voice rising. "You humiliated us. You destroyed our reputation. You did that yourself when you stole from your daughter. We're your parents. We gave you life." I opened grandfather's box, pulled out his letter. Should I read this? The part where he describes finding bruises on me? The section about your financial manipulation of him during his cancer treatment? The list of times you tried to get him to change his will? My mother went pale. He was sick, confused. He was lucid enough to get it notarized, to have Dr. Campbell certify his mental competency, to hide it where you'd never find it with me. The locksmith shifted uncomfortably. Jalen zoomed the camera on the evidence table. Each bag contained another piece of their theft-forged signatures, fraudulent transfers, falsified documents. "Sign," Sarah said simply, "or tomorrow this becomes criminal." My father grabbed the pen like it burned. He signed his name across 7 documents: account transfers, property deeds, restitution agreements. My mother followed, her hand shaking so badly the notary had to steady the paper. "The car," I said. My father threw the keys on the table. They slid across the wood, stopping against grandfather's box. "Your credit cards in my name." My mother pulled them from her wallet, each one a small surrender. "The storage unit key, the one with the rest of my things." It joined the pile. Sarah gathered the signed documents, had the notary seal each one. "These will be filed with the court at 8 a.m. Any attempt to contest them will trigger the criminal prosecution." I stood, picking up grandfather's box. "You know what the saddest part is? I would have given you money. If you'd asked, if you'd been honest, I would have helped." "We didn't need help," my father said. "We needed what we were owed." "For what?" "For doing the legal minimum of raising a child. For sacrificing our dreams." The words exploded from my mother. "For giving up everything so you could have a future." I looked around their living room, the expensive furniture, the renovated kitchen visible through the doorway, the cruise photos on the walls. "What exactly did you sacrifice?" She had no answer. I walked to the door, stopped at the family photos. Me at basic training graduation, they'd almost smiled in that one. My deployment ceremony, they'd stood as far from me as the frame allowed. Every photo captured the truth duty without love, obligation without warmth. "The deployment money," my father said suddenly, "you won't need it overseas. That's for my future, my real future, the one without you in it. You can't just erase us. We're your parents." I turned, looked them in the eye. "No, you're 2 people who had a child they saw as an investment. Well, consider this account closed." The body cam captured their faces. My mother's tears, my father's rage, the moment they realized I meant it. "When I get back," I said, "you'll be strangers. Don't contact me. Don't come to my house. Don't even pray for me. We're done." "Avery," my mother started. "My name," I said, "is Lieutenant Dalton, and you no longer have permission to use it." Evidence log entry 142. All documents signed and notarized. Property recovered. Parents' acknowledgement of theft documented on video. Case closed. 5 a.m. at the bank. The manager opened early just for me. Sarah had explained the deployment timeline. Maya sat beside me with her laptop, documenting every transaction. "The escrow account has been released," the manager said, sliding papers across his desk. "The house payments have been verified as solely yours. Full ownership transfers to you immediately." I signed. Another account restored the deployment savings. Every penny returned with interest to the court had ordered as punitive damages. My checking account, clean and solely mine. The car loan, transferred back under only my name. At the DMV, they expedited everything. Military deployment got me to the front of every line. New registration, new plates, my name alone on every document. The clerk, a veteran himself, shook my hand. Give him hell overseas, Lieutenant. The church was my last stop, not for forgiveness or closure for the final documentation. Pastor Morrison met me in his office, the morning light streaming through stained glass. On his desk, a single paper. The board met in emergency session last night, he said. Your father's volunteer award has been rescinded. I didn't ask for that. You didn't have to. 300 people saw what happened. The treasurer found more discrepancies. Donations that match your deployment dates. He slid the paper over. This is the board's statement. Your parents' membership has been suspended pending investigation. I didn't take the paper. That wasn't my fight anymore. They're saying you destroyed them, Morrison said quietly. They destroyed themselves. I just held up a mirror. Outside, the sunrise painted Ridge Harbor gold. My car, truly mine, now sat loaded with everything I owned. The grandfather's box sat on the passenger seat, his watch on my wrist, every document filed, every asset recovered, every thread of their control severed. Maya waited by her car. Your new bank credentials are encrypted and uploaded. Jalen's got copies of everything in his safe. Sarah will handle anything that comes up while you're gone. The house property management company takes over at noon. They'll maintain it, keep it ready for when you come home. Home. A word that finally meant something. I drove past my parents' house one last time, the Lincoln in the driveway, newspapers piling up they hadn't left since last night. The curtains were drawn, the house dark despite the morning sun. They'd built themselves a prison of their own greed, and now they had to live in it. The deployment processing center buzzed with controlled chaos. Soldiers saying goodbye, families crying, last-minute preparations. I stood alone in my ACU's, deployment bag at my feet, watching others cling to their loved ones. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Lieutenant Dalton, this is Special Agent Rivera, FBI Financial Crimes Division. We received a report about wire fraud involving a service member. I'm deploying in 30 minutes. We know. We'll handle everything while you're gone. Your documentation is impressive. Your parents won't be a problem when you return. I ended the call, turned off the phone, handed it to the supply sergeant for storage. 9 months without their voices, their manipulation, their theft. 9 months of just being a soldier, not a daughter being bled dry. Dalton, load up! The deployment sergeant's voice echoed across the tarmac. I hefted my bag, felt grandfather's watch tick against my wrist, each second counting toward a future they couldn't touch. The plane's engines roared to life. Through the window, I watched Ridge Harbor shrink below. Somewhere down there, my parents were discovering their credit cards declined, their reputation destroyed, their victim gone. They'd stolen from me for 3 years, thinking uniform meant stupid, thinking service meant servitude. They never understood the most basic military principle: every battle is won before it begins. In the preparation, in the documentation, in the refusal to surrender. I'd taken back every dollar through the same door they'd used to steal at paperwork. The weapon they'd taught me to use turned against them with military precision. The plane banked east toward the sunrise, toward deployment, toward 9 months of purpose without parasites. In my pocket, the key to my house. My house sat next to grandfather's letter. The last line he'd written echoed in my mind. They'll try to take everything, sweetheart. Don't let them. Fight with papers, not fists. Win with evidence, not emotion. I'd done both. I'd won everything. The evidence log's final entry had been simple: mission complete. All assets recovered. No casualties. Well, none on my side anyway. The clouds swallowed the plane, carrying me toward war. But the hardest battle was already won, in a church fellowship hall, a living room, a courthouse, one with signatures and seals, timestamps and testimony. I closed my eyes, smiled, and for the first time in 3 years, felt free. They'd kicked me out the night before deployment. by dawn, I'd taken everything back. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing your thoughts below. What would you have done in my situation? Your stories and perspectives mean everything to me.